Hello, hello. Welcome to episode 26 of the Golden Question podcast. In today's episode, I'm going to be answering why I am not voting for Trump this coming election. Now, I'm going to separate this into two parts: the economy and healthcare. Now, I sort of alluded to this in my previous episode, but I want to clear it out a bit more and emphasize some extra points that I didn't mention last episode. So, on the economy, Trump is being super hypocritical, and it's honestly frustrating seeing what he is saying about the economy, these falsehoods, right? The idea that our economy now is better than it has ever been before. It's better than it's been in the industrial revolution back in the at the turn of the century. I mean, this idea that we have the best economy now, no, I don't think anybody believes it unless obviously you just blindly support Trump, which I think a lot of people are unfortunately now doing. And they will be disappointed, as I said, when this economy crashes. And it's going to be scary if Trump gets elected and we do have this new recession that's not related to COVID, but a lot of people are going to question their support to Trump and their support to the whole message, right? This whole idea of limited government, free market, which Trump hasn't even followed any of those policies, but he sort of laid claim to the names, which obviously people aren't who don't know any better are going to think that that's actually the policies that he's followed, but in fact it isn't, and it is actually the complete opposite. So Trump is, as he said in the first presidential debate with Hillary Clinton in 2016, or I believe it's 2015, he said that we are in a big, fat, ugly bubble. And I'm going to keep repeating that over and over again, right? We are in a big, fat, ugly bubble. And he said things are going to get awfully scary, awfully dangerous when the Fed tries to raise interest rates. Him alluding to that the current interest rate environment, which at the time was, still near all-time lows, this he was alluding to it being a bad thing and how interest rates should rise, but if they do, there's going to be a hit on the stock market. And that right there sold it for me for President Trump in the first debate. He proven to me that he's actually understood the problems. He understands that this stock market boom that we got under Obama as well. A lot of people don't understand that the S&P, the Dow, we're still going up under Trump, just as how I'm sorry, we're still going up under Obama, just as how they're going up under Trump now. But the only difference between the two rises is that it's a little bit more uh, greater under Trump, and I would argue that that's mainly because of this optimism, right? This optimism that Trump is this free market guy who's going to decrease regulations, and so that artificially gave this false optimism in the market. But again, if you look at the trends, the stock market has been going up just as how it's been going up under Obama, and it's just continuing on its way through Trump's 4 years. So the economy was going up. I'm sorry, the stock market was going up under Obama, but Trump correctly pointed out that that was a bubble, right? It was phony growth. It was all perpetuated by the Fed. The Fed keeping interest rates low, right? People consuming debt, and it's creating this artificial high in the stock market. And so that's the message that Trump ran on. He said he was going to correct those problems and give us real economic growth, right? He said we've had the slowest recovery since the Great Depression, and so he was going to give us a real recovery, not this phony recovery, right? Reinflating a bubble isn't a recovery, so that is a promise that Trump made. And another thing that he pointed out was the false economic numbers, right? All these numbers about low unemployment under Obama and low inflation, he made fun of those, right? He said, don't believe those numbers, those unemployment numbers, because, they don't factor in people who have part time jobs who would prefer a full time job, but they can't find a full time job, but, they're not considered uh, unemployed. And he said, ignore the numbers because some people have given up looking for jobs, and so they don't get counted in the unemployment number, but they've just given up. It's not like they would want a job, but they've given up looking for one. Or people who are looking for a second job while they're working, right? The unemployment number doesn't take any of that into account. And so Trump has correctly pointed out those problems. But as far as I'm concerned, the way we measure these numbers haven't changed. And so now all of a sudden Trump is touting these low unemployment numbers and how everything's going great. But how come he made fun of them when they were great under Obama, right? As soon as Trump inherited this economy, really, this as soon as he got into the presidency, and now the economy's in front of him, now he has to pretend everything is magically great. And this is really where the hypocrisy comes in, and that is nothing has changed. It's the same economy, but now Trump wants to brand it as if everything's going good. But as he said himself, we are in a big, fat, ugly bubble, right? The stock market is going up, and I'm watching the debate, and he's saying the stock market's going up and how everything's going great. What happened to this bubble narrative that he went off, that he went on saying throughout his running for president back in 2015? What happened to this idea that we're in a bubble, that we should ignore the stock market numbers because they're not representative of the actual economy? And then he mentioned people's 401ks. I mean, that's again still in this bubble narrative. People's 401ks were going up also before the '08 recession, right? The real estates have been going up, but obviously that comes crashing down because it's not real growth. It was a bubble inflated by the Federal Reserve. So the Federal Reserve inflated the housing bubble. Now they're inflating every bubble, right? Any sector of the economy now is inflated. So this is where the hypocrisy comes in, and it's frustrating, really frustrating watching Trump tout this supposedly great economy. Meanwhile, it's the same continuation of numbers under Obama. And in fact, I think that Trump's unemployment numbers might actually become worse than Obama's now because looking at Obama's second term, I think they're actually better than what we have right now. I mean, this COVID really cut any gains that Trump has had in the past 4 years. So Trump correctly pointed out the problems. Now that he's inherited the problems, now he wants to rewrap them and claim that things are going well and that the problem doesn't exist anymore. And now it's actually doing great. Right. Another thing is, how can we go from having the slowest recovery, having the worst economy, which is what Trump said under Obama? We had the worst economy since the Great Depression, the worst recovery since the Great Depression. How can we have the worst economy and then overnight it automatically becomes the greatest economy of all time? Don't you think there's a transition period, or don't you think that there needs to be a collapse, there needs to be a recession to obviously as a correction? I mean, he surely understands how markets work. You have to have a correction to correct for the problems of the past. You can't just, if I'm a drug addict, I can't just stop taking drugs and then all of a sudden it's sunshine and roses, right? That's not how corrections work. When you go through a correction, you go through a small withdrawal. That's just as how coincidentally, that's just how it works on a person. That's how it works on an economy as well. And obviously, people don't understand that. But I think Trump does. It's just that he's not willing to actually correct the problems in the economy. Right now that he's inherited the problems, he said, you know what, it's not worth actually trying to correct this because obviously it's gonna result in a crash. Another hypocritical thing that he said is, again, in 2016, during his first presidential debate, he said that Janet Yellen, who was the Fed chairman at the time, was more political, right? And then he obviously threw in a little joke there. He said she's more political than Hillary Clinton, which didn't make sense, but I sort of get what he means. And again, that's another correct problem that he pointed out. These Fed chairmen, which were appointed, and the whole Federal Reserve System is supposed to be independent. It's supposed to work for the good of the people. They don't care about who the president is. They're not working for the president. They're not working for the government. They're supposed to be this private entity that is working to supposedly control and micromanage the economy. And that includes, even if making the economy improve results in a short-term pain or a short-term crash or a short-term correction, they would still go through those policies, even though it may make the president look bad for whoever's the sitting president. So that's the idea. But obviously, that doesn't, in your wildest dreams, that's what's going to happen, right? Anybody who thought that the Fed is independent or was going to be independent is honestly, that's just dishonest. The Fed works with government to make the economy artificially improve and to make it look good, right? With inflation, where it inflates prices and it gives the illusion that the economy is doing good, but in fact, it's not. You're actually warping the economy. You're actually inducing in the malinvestments. And with that, you help government grow because more and more people get levered up, more people go into debt. And these low interest rates obviously enable the government itself to take advantage of those and go into debt. And Trump even said that the president should take advantage. So, I mean, everything so far that Trump has done is just, it's honestly more scary in a way than any other president that I've seen do. And really, the conservatives should be really scared because you have a president who is claiming that everything's great when it's actually not. Has made the Federal Reserve's balance sheet has increased at a rate that we've never seen ever before, and it's exclusively under Trump where it is increased. It's probably increased more than it has ever increased. If you were to add up the balance sheets before Trump, Trump has doubled in a way, or more than doubled the balance of the Federal Reserve. And what does that mean? That means the Federal Reserve is owning more property. It's owning more of the economy. It's owning a bigger portion of assets that are in the U.S. And that is a scary thing for conservatives to realize that this supposedly this private entity, which again is working with government, owns this large portion of the U.S. economy. That is a scary thought. And again, some conspiracy theorists might say that the Federal Reserve is facilitating the government's acquisition of assets, right? The idea that all assets are public, right? We should ban private ownership, private property, and all property is government property. Could the Federal Reserve be facilitating this, right? Just buying a property and then giving it to the government? I mean, that's what we're seeing. The Federal Reserve is becoming the lender of last resort. It's what everybody now goes to get money, and with that, the Federal Reserve owns the property, and securitizes all this debt. So, and not only that, I mean, the Federal Reserve is now just straight up buying assets, not even lending out money to securitize it. It's just straight up buying it, right? I'm trying to sell my house. Nobody wants to buy my house. Oh, let me just sell it to the Federal Reserve. And so, the Fed obviously becomes this buyer of last resort. So we've never seen this happen, and it has happened under Trump. We've never seen the economy boom like this under Trump. And with that comes the increased price in gold. We've never seen a rise like this in gold, and especially this short period of time. Right, the high that we got in 2011 could be argued that that's been slowly happening over the years, and it's obviously happened in a span of 3-4 years. Now we've had this increase probably in 2 years. I mean, we've never seen gold jump up in price at a rate like this. So all these factors, and again, there's many more that I'm probably not including, and also obviously the trade deficits. I forgot to include that. The trade deficits, we've never seen trade deficits increase like this before. America is now again importing more than it is exporting. We're taking advantage of the world. Trump has it the other way around. Trump wants to say that the world is safe. And again, this is all reminiscent of 1984, right? Where you have the government, Big Brother, saying that the world is the enemy, and Trump, honestly saying the same thing. But in fact, again, it's in reverse. It's actually we're the ones who are taking advantage of the world. We're the ones who are sucking out all the produce, all the goods and services that other foreign countries provide, and in return, we're giving them these, worthless pieces of dollar. At least if they were backed by gold, you could understand. I would argue, yeah. I mean, we acquired the gold, and so we're exchanging real money for those goods and services. But we're giving them these worthless pieces of dollar that aren't backed by anything. And it's not like, in the event that they weren't backed by gold in the past, at least we had a vibrant economy that we could back the dollar by. Again, I'm not arguing that that's the way it should be, but the least worst case scenario is at least this paper currency could be backed by a strong economy. but it's not, right? We have a lousy economy, and we have a dollar that's backing that lousy economy. And so that is how Trump has this all backwards. It's we're the ones who are taking advantage. So we have the trade deficits. You can add that to the list. Somebody again who now is threatening other countries to not not allowing us to import goods from them, and this idea that if we get rid of China, right, if we get rid of all these nations who normally export to us, we will then be incentivized to create the goods and services ourselves. I mean, I never understood that. If we can create the goods and services ourselves, why haven't we? It's because it's cheaper to produce the goods and services out there. And Americans have made, an economical decision to buy goods where they're cheapest. I mean, that's how everybody lives. You look for the cheapest option. And so if you can find goods and services that are cheaper outside that are being imported, then you would obviously buy those instead of the ones that are made in your own country. And so that's what people have done, and that's why manufacturing has left this country. The government has made companies in the US uncompetitive, right? They cannot compete with these foreign countries who obviously have fewer regulations, fewer taxes, and it's all in relative terms. So Trump doesn't understand the trade deficit, doesn't understand, well, he could understand it, but he's portraying as if he doesn't. Right? He's not, all right, I'll just say he's not correctively I analyzing the trade deficits, the job numbers, the Federal Reserve. Again, I think I've sidetracked. Let me go back to the chairman's. So Trump again made fun of uh, Obama, and made fun of Janet Yellen because they were working together. He said Janet Yellen was just helping inflate this bubble economy so that it can make Obama look good. I mean, isn't that what's happening now also? I mean, Trump now actively tweets. You could read it. Him tweeting to Jerome Powell saying that, Jerome Powell wants to raise interest rates and threaten this great economy. We should keep interest rates low so that we could, again, he's explicitly saying that we have a bubble economy and that Jerome Powell should lower interest rates so that we can reinflate this bubble economy. I mean, he's out there saying it. It's not like he's hiding it anymore. So again, that's dangerous, hypocritical. Um, Another thing is you have back to what makes Trump scary is that he's actively saying that the government should take advantage of these low interest rates to go into debt. I mean, you would never hear a president say that. The idea that the government now is saying, hey, first of all, obviously they're in collusion with the Fed, so they can control what the Fed does with interest rates. So they can tell the Fed chairman, keep interest rates this low. So they keep interest rates this low so that the government can now expand and incur more debt. And again, back to the more philosophical idea, let's zoom out a little bit. This idea that, again, Trump, same big government guy, just as how Joe Biden is. So they're both big government guys, except that one wants to pay for that big government through taxes, which is completely fine. I mean, if you're going to have big government, you need to pay for it. That's plain and simple. Big government doesn't come for free. It comes at a cost. So you have one who's saying, I'll give you big government, but hey, I'm going to increase your taxes. I'm going to be honest with you. Versus Trump, who's saying, yeah, I'll give you that same big government that Biden's giving you, but I will lower your taxes, right? Now, obviously, that sounds more appealing because it sounds like you're getting big government for nothing. But what you don't realize is the way that Trump is going to pay for this big government is through debt. It's the federal government going into debt, and obviously the Federal Reserve buying up that debt. And what does that do? That obviously creates inflation. So you pay for government through your reduced purchasing power, which is obviously the most expensive way you could pay for government. And it kills the economy while doing so, right? You have taxes which can lower the productivity, but then you have a much more dangerous way of funding government, and that is through debt, through inflation. Why would I want to vote for this guy? So on the economy alone, obviously, I don't want that. I'm probably going to be voting for Joe Biden just to show my protest against Trump, against his failure to fulfill his promises, and to show people, you know what? Look, we're getting big government regardless. I don't like big government, but if you put a gun to my head and you put two people in front of me and you told me which one would you support, I would support the person who wants to pay for big government honestly, who wants to let Americans feel the burden, feel the cost, as they say, feel the burn of that big government. And then, who knows? They could then make a wise decision to say, hey, maybe this big government is not worth it. It's not worth the cost and the expense that it has on the economy. So you let people pay for that big government from their own pockets, and then they could, maybe think twice about what they've what they wanted or what they've voted into. So that's why I think I'll be voting for Biden versus, again, Trump, who throws you in this illusion where you can get big government for free, right? And this, again, this doesn't sound conservative at all. This idea that future generations are going to pay for the debts of today, is that really a conservative value, right? Does your grandparents go into debt thinking that her kids are going to pay for it and her grandkids are going to pay for it? I mean, that doesn't sound conservative at all. So again, Trump increasing government spending, increasing budget deficits, increasing the Fed's balance sheet, increasing this bubble economy, increasing overall debt in the nation, increasing trade deficits. All that is bad news. And Trump is now trying to frame that, everything's going good. These are all bad for the economy. All those things that I've said that Trump has done are bad for the economy, right? Because it leads to a less free economy. Now let's quickly move on to healthcare. Trump, again in the debate, said that he removed the worst part of Obamacare, and that is the mandate, the individual mandate. He first of all, this again, he could understand the healthcare system, how healthcare works, but I feel like the main reason why he's against Obamacare is just because he's against Obama, and it's all political. He doesn't like Obama, and so he doesn't like anything that he does, and so he thinks that he can make Obamacare a better system. He's not a free market guy with when it pertains to the economy. I mean, he could be, but now that he's in office, he's obviously not, and I think that goes with a lot of his constituents there, people who have been free market guys, and then all of a sudden, once they get into power, they all of a sudden now just continue the same policies. I mean, Jerome Powell, I think at one point advocated for a gold standard, and so people thought, hey, maybe this guy will be for the gold standard. Maybe this guy um, will balance the budgets of the Fed and maybe raise interest rates. But again, they're before you get into the government, you're a completely different person than you are while you're in it and when you get out. So Trump, I think that he doesn't understand the healthcare system. I think he does understand the economy, but obviously that power has corrupted him. But when it comes to healthcare, he just simply doesn't understand it. Because what he doesn't realize is the only thing that sort of kept Obamacare together in a way. Again, it's still a mess, but the only thing that sort of kept it afloat just for a little bit is that individual mandate. Because when you remove the ability for insurance companies to discriminate based on your pre-existing condition, right? This idea that if you have a condition and you haven't purchased insurance, you could just go ahead and demand your any insurance company to pay for you. Whatever upfront cost you pay, that's going to be, um, that's not going to matter. Once you remove the ability to discriminate, nobody's going to purchase health insurance while they're healthy. Everybody's going to wait until they get sick and then purchase health insurance, right? The idea of insurance rests on the idea that you're healthy for in this case for health insurance. The healthy people pay for the sick people, and there needs to be more healthy people than sick people, because if there's the same amount of healthy sick people, then it's just these healthy people paying the same amount as if they would have paid if they were to just pay for the healthcare up front out of their pocket. So you need to have more healthy insured people to pay for the healthy sick people. I'm sorry, the healthy sick people, the sick who are insured. Why? Because then the cost gets dispersed. So obviously your goal is to get as many people to pay insurance as possible so that everyone's individual costs go down. But once you remove the mandate to pay for insurance um, um, once you remove the incentive to pay for insurance while you're still healthy, and you're and you allow people to purchase insurance after they get sick, then who in their right mind would pay for insurance while they're healthy? Why not wait until you're sick and then just, say that you want your health insurance to pay for you? So Obamacare realized this. So he first, I mean, I would imagine this is how it went through. He first put that provision: healthcare companies cannot discriminate based on pre-existing conditions. But then he realized, wait a second, nobody's going to pay for health insurance. And so what did he do? He then included a mandate that said uh, you have to pay for health insurance, and if you don't, you're going to pay a penalty. That this individual mandate that Trump now thinks it's a bad thing, but that's again the only thing that's kept this thing together, because now people are forced to pay health insurance, and if they don't, they're going to pay a penalty, which is obviously unconstitutional. But the court ruled that because it was such a small amount, um, it counted as a tax. But Obama, in this case, you don't want people paying the penalty, because what people ended up doing is they just ended up paying the penalty because of how small it was, rather than paying for the health insurance. Because ideally, if you just pay the penalty, you could still claim that I want health insurance, even though I'm sick, and even if I didn't have it before. So people in all started to just end up paying the penalty. Now, you might ask, why didn't the penalty become increased to a point where it's greater than if you were to actually pay for health insurance? Well, then the court might have not ruled that it was just a tax, right? The only reason why the court ruled it was a tax is because of how small it was. So that's why, this whole Obamacare thing fell, because the penalty wasn't high enough in a way. But again, the whole thing is obviously unconstitutional. The whole thing doesn't make sense. It's not. It doesn't work economically. It doesn't. The single payer system does not work. It does not produce the quality. It does not produce. Um, it is not as efficient, and it's not as functioning as a free market healthcare system. Now, if Trump was really conservative, he would have said, we need a free market healthcare system. We need to remove all this Obamacare nonsense. We need to remove all these. And again, the reason why a lot of people lose their health insurance is because the government has tied it with employment. Somehow your employer now has to provide you with health insurance. So when you lose your job, you lose your insurance also. So again, this is another problem that the government created, and then it comes and touts that it has a solution. So Trump should have said, hey, we're going to get rid of Obamacare. We're going to get rid of all these provisions. We're going to decrease regulations in the healthcare industry. I mean, probably the healthcare industry is one of the most regulated industries, most regulated sector, I guess, healthcare in our economy. So we should have reduced um, all these Obamacare provisions, reduced all these regulations, and we probably should have encouraged people to not pay for to not allow your insurance to pay for small inconsequential things, right? Like your normal checkups, just your normal day-to-day things, your normal quote unquote maintenance, right? Your insurance shouldn't pay for that. I mean, does your car insurance pay for your tire pressure, right? To reinflate your tires? Does it pay for your tires? Does it pay for a car wash? No, because those are not life-threatening things. Those are not things that jeopardize the entire whatever you're trying to insure. Your health insurance only I'm sorry, your car insurance only covers you if you get into a car accident, if you have a major accident that impairs your driving. So same thing should be going on for insurance, and that's what it was initially. But again, insurance companies colluded with government, and so people started to use their insurance as just like a government program, as if everything's free, right? They can pay these low premiums, and their insurance can cover all these all these expenses, even the small consequential ones, inconsequential, excuse me. So Trump should have, along with everything else that I've said, he could have said, you know what, people shouldn't be using their health insurance to pay for small regular checkups. That should be paid out of pocket. And probably the reason why your checkups and on all these little things are so expensive is because your health insurance is providing them, right? Your doctors don't care how much they charge you because they know your insurance is going to pay for it. There's no incentive for them to keep prices low. They could charge however they want for a checkup. but they know that you're not paying for it out of pocket, so there's no problem. And again, there's countless stories out there where you have people who realize, wow, this is so expensive, and then the doctors literally admit to them that, I don't, you shouldn't have anything to worry about because your insurance is going to pay for it. So again, if Trump was a conservative, Trump was a free market guy, if he believed in the free market, if he wanted us to have a free market healthcare system, he would have pointed out these problems and he would have gave these solutions, but he hasn't. And he doesn't understand healthcare, and he simply wants to rebrand Obamacare as Trump care and, claim it as his own. And as he claims everything, he puts the Trump name on everything, and says that it's because it has the Trump name, it's good, right? He's essentially selling his name in a way. He wants to do the same to healthcare. It's not like he hates Obamacare because he hates the idea of it. He just hates Obamacare because he thinks he could do it better. So again, that's not conservative. That's not in the lines with the Constitution. That's not in the lines with the idea of the free market. So that's why I think Trump in healthcare is very dangerous, because again, what people are going to realize is he's being hypocritical. He's made fun of Obamacare, but he's going to do the same exact thing as Trump care, and that's what I'm calling. I mean, that's probably what he might call his new healthcare plan. So again, I could expand on this. I can go on and on for several hours on, what Trump has failed to do and the damages that he's done actually to the economy. Not what he's failed to do, but the damages he's done. And so to me, again, I realized that Trump is just a politician. He's sort of embraced the politician. He said he's going to drain the swamp. Now he's fully immersed himself in that swamp, and he's continued the same policies as before. And we haven't seen this. We've seen this before. This isn't the first time. We've seen this under Bush, where again Bush came out. People were fed up with the Democrats, with the Clintons, and so they decided to take on that red ticket ballot. And then they realized that Bush has just continued the same policies of Clinton, and again has made government bigger, right? All this, the Americans with Disabilities Act, I think that's what it's called, right? That was passed under a Republican Senate, a Republican president. So more regulations, more big government under Republican president, just as how they did, just as how it was under a Democrat run Senate and president. And so you see a Republican continue the same policies, tout that everything magically has gotten better, even though he's increased government, right? He's running saying that the Democrats have done a bad job because of their big government policies. But then when he gets elected, he continues those same big government policies, adds more policies, and then says everything's good, which defeats the whole narrative that his running mate um, was bad at his job because of the big government. It's like saying this glass of water is not clear enough. It's sort of getting a little bit dark. I'm going to add more black ink to it to make it even darker, and then say, "Yeah, look, I made it, now it's even better." But wasn't that the whole point? You wanted to reverse the actions of your predecessor, not add on to them and then claim that it's now better. If you add on to the same policies that your predecessor has done and then claim everything's better, then you sort of just you're sort of proving the point that your predecessor, the policies that he's done are actually good, and that you're just expanding on them and making them even larger, to supposedly produce an even better effect. But anyways, you have Bush again, who continues the same policies as Clinton plus two, right? He adds more to it, and then the economy crashes, right? The economy implodes, and then you see this huge swing to the left. You see a huge swing to socialism because people realize that, hey, this president supported, this president was a Republican, so he sort of embodied free market constitutionalism, capitalism, and the economy crashed. So people, connect two and two. Again, they're not accurate in their connections because they don't realize that that president actually didn't represent those things. But to them, if a president says he represents those things, they're going to connect the dots. They're going to see that, hey, this president said he's a capitalist, said he's for the free market, and yet the economy crashed under him. You know what? I probably am not a supporter of that. I'm probably more of a socialist. And so you have people swing to the left, and then you have a small group of people start to realize, that the economy isn't actually improving under these socialist policies, and this was throughout Obama's presidency. And so that's why we had another huge swing to the right, because people again realized, wait a second, this guy sort of embraced socialism. He was against capitalism, and things haven't improved. So people have now said, yeah, maybe capitalism is the truth, and so they swing to the right. And so we've got Trump, and again, every single time it gets progressively worse, right? We had a huge swing to the left, and to counteract that huge swing to the left, we had a huge swing to the right. We had a huge swing to Trump, who sort of again fully embraced this capitalist free market thing, when in fact he hasn't done any of that. In fact, he's probably acted more socialist than Obama himself. And so once people realize the economy's not doing as good, or when it eventually crashes, just imagine how further left we're going to go after Trump, right? Obama is going to seem like a Republican to us, like a conservative, as compared to the socialists that we have in power. And we see this. I mean, look at the Democratic Party. Now they're just openly advocating for socialism. And you have Bernie Sanders, who's now admitting that he's a socialist. So you're going to see a huge swing to the left after Trump's presidency. And, if he does get elected for a second term, we're going to have this recession. We're going to have this economic crash. And things are going to get ugly. And, the future of America is going to look pretty dark once we see this massive swing to the left. And you're going to see a lot of conservatives who supported Trump without knowing the economics and everything might doubt their conservatism, and they might say, you know what, maybe I should become a liberal, because look, I supported this conservative. I thought I was a conservative, and this whole economy came crashing down. I lost everything. And so maybe I might switch up my beliefs. Maybe I might go onto the other side and see how things work out there. So that's I'm telling you, if Trump gets elected and if we have this big recession, this is what is going to happen. And unfortunately, we sort of had this recession going. I mean, in 2019, during the summer of 2019, things have started to go downhill a little bit. The Fed came out, and there was obviously that huge interest rate spike in the overnight markets, right? I mean, hopefully you guys remember that. We've seen that spike, and so the Fed had to step in and purchase a bunch of assets, lowering interest rates, printing a bunch of money. And so this is the conspiracy, really, is that why did this COVID thing come coincidentally at that moment when the economy may have looked like it started to slip? That's really the the skepticism in me says, wait a second, why is this COVID thing coming just at this right time? Seems a bit questionable that COVID comes just as when things started to go a little bit downhill. But anyways, that's just the skeptic in me coming out. The conspiracy theorist in me coming out. So that's the framework. That's sort of the foundation of why I would not be voting for Trump, and why I urge you not to vote for Trump, and instead vote for Biden. Not in the hopes that his policies succeed, but in the hopes that people can feel the burden of that big government, because Trump is promising to raise your taxes for that big government. And you have a lot of people who want big government, who want free things, but they don't realize the actual cost of those free things, and how those free things are more expensive than they would actually be if they were to just pay for them up front. So that'll be it. Hope you guys enjoyed, and as always, stay safe.